Hey, horror lovers. Some killers hide behind lies, others hide behind trauma. Tonight, you'll hear from both. Let the horror begin. I still don't know if I believe he did it in his sleep, but I'll never forget the look on his face when I showed him the photos. His name was Thomas Elroy. He was 29 years old, a quiet mechanic who lived alone in a small town just outside Albany, New York. People said he was odd, but not dangerous. He didn't talk much, kept to himself, and never caused trouble. He'd been seeing a sleep specialist for nearly a year because he suffered from extreme episodes of sleepwalking. At least, that's what he said. I was called in after the second body was found. Both victims were women. Both killed the same way, bludgeoned with a blunt object, then posed in a bed inside their own homes, arms folded across their chests. A single daisy was placed on the pillow beside them, and both were killed on a Tuesday, exactly 2 weeks apart. The first was considered a random act of violence. The second made it a pattern. At the second scene, something felt off. The house wasn't ransacked. There were no signs of forced entry, no defensive wounds on the victim. Whoever did it knew how to move quietly, like they belonged there. And the way the body was positioned, it didn't feel like rage. It felt ritualistic, almost gentle, which somehow made it worse. We canvassed the neighborhood, and a few people mentioned seeing a man walking near the woods around 2 a.m. Someone even said he looked like he was sleepwalking. That's when Thomas's name came up. He lived just 2 streets over and had been spotted before, walking barefoot in his driveway at night, mumbling to himself. I interviewed him the next morning. He answered the door in sweatpants and a hoodie, dark circles under his eyes. He looked exhausted, like he hadn't truly rested in days. But he didn't seem nervous. When I asked where he'd been the night before, he said, "I was asleep, I think. But I don't always stay that way." I remember how still the room got after that. He told me he'd woken up before, covered in dirt or with leaves in his bed. One time he found a bruise on his arm that looked like a bite mark. He thought he was hurting himself while sleepwalking. He'd even set up a camera in his bedroom once, but it stopped recording halfway through the night. "I don't know what I'm doing out there," he said, rubbing his eyes. "I'm scared to sleep, but I can't stay awake forever." At that point, we had nothing to hold him on. No blood, no fingerprints, just rumors, weird behavior, and a growing sense that something wasn't right. Then the third body showed up. This one was different. The victim, a woman named Dana Kessler, had a security system, but it hadn't been disabled. It had been unplugged from the basement. That meant the killer had to enter the house, find the panel, and disable it quietly, without waking anyone. That didn't sound like someone who was half-conscious and stumbling through a dream. That sounded like planning. And that's when I got the search warrant for Thomas's place. We didn't find a murder weapon, but in a crawl space under the floorboards, we found a small box wrapped in a red towel. Inside were 3 items: a blood-stained daisy, a woman's bracelet, and a USB stick. The USB had footage, not of the killings, but of Thomas talking to the camera. In the first video, he was sitting on the edge of his bed, eyes half open. "I don't know what I'm doing," he said. "If you're watching this and I've done something bad, I didn't mean to. I didn't know." But in the last video, it was different. He was fully awake, smiling. It was daytime. He stared at the lens and whispered, "I feel free when I sleep. No guilt, no noise in my head, just peace." The footage was chilling, but still not a confession. We needed more. That night, I sat outside his house in an unmarked car and waited. Around 3:17 a.m., his front door opened. He walked out barefoot in the cold, wearing nothing but thin pajamas. I followed him on foot. He wandered through the woods behind his home, barely reacting to the branches snapping under his feet. He didn't speak, didn't twitch. He just moved like a puppet being pulled by invisible strings. Then he stopped in front of a random house, a house we later found out belonged to a woman who lived alone. He reached down, picked up a rock from the ground, and walked straight toward the front door. That's when we grabbed him. He didn't fight, he didn't say a word. And when I showed him the photos of the crime scenes in the interrogation room, he looked at them like they were completely new to him. He didn't react to the blood or the bodies. But when he saw the daisy on the pillow, he blinked, slowly, like something familiar had reached the surface. Then he said something I'll never forget. "I only remember the dreams, not the dirt." We kept him under a 72-hour hold and brought in sleep specialists. They hooked him up to machines, monitored his brain waves. Every night, the same thing happened. At around 3 a.m., his heart rate spiked, his body twitched, and he started to mumble names in his sleep. Names that matched his victims. But the final nail was a neighbor's security cam footage that we hadn't seen before. It showed Thomas leaving his house at night, but before he walked off camera, he reached back inside and quietly locked his own front door. That wasn't sleepwalking. That was awareness. That was control. He was charged with 3 counts of murder and pled not guilty by reason of insanity. His lawyers claimed he had a rare parasomnia disorder. The judge didn't buy it. But here's what haunts me the most. In his final statement before the trial ended, Thomas said, "I never wanted to wake up. Because when I was asleep, I was someone else. And I liked who I was." The jury found him guilty. He's serving life without parole, but sometimes, when I lie awake at night, I wonder if he really didn't know what he was doing, or if he just used his sleep as a mask. Because if you can kill in your dreams and enjoy it, who are you really when you wake up? It started with a referral. My co-worker, Melanie, told me about a girl named Lily who watched her kids a few nights a week. "She's quiet," she said, "and great with kids. Doesn't talk much, but the boys love her." That was enough for me. My husband and I were in desperate need of a night out. We just moved into a new town, and our 4-year-old Mason had been acting out during the transition. We chalked it up to the stress of the move. Tantrums, biting at daycare, breaking toys, all things we thought were just part of his age. We met Lily on a rainy Thursday evening. She arrived early, standing awkwardly on the front porch, her thin figure barely filling out her coat. She had pale skin, jet black hair tied tightly back, and a voice that was soft but steady. Mason warmed up to her instantly. He brought her his toy truck without being asked, a rare sign of approval from our son. That should have made me feel better. But there was something about her eyes I couldn't shake. Not the color, but how distant they seemed, like she was always somewhere else. Still, we left for dinner that night without a second thought. By the time we got back, the house was spotless. Mason was asleep in bed. Lily was on the couch, reading a book I didn't even remember owning. She looked up and smiled politely. "He's a good boy," she said. "Just needs patience." It felt like a compliment and a warning at the same time. Over the next few weeks, Lily became a regular fixture in our home. Mason adored her. He stopped throwing tantrums. He even started cleaning up his toys without being asked. My husband said she was a miracle worker. But I started to notice little things. One night, I found her standing outside Mason's bedroom door after he'd gone to sleep. The lights were off, but she wasn't moving, just standing there like she was listening. I startled her when I asked if everything was okay. She jumped and said she was just checking on him. Her tone never changed. always calm, always composed. Then I found something strange. While cleaning out the laundry room, I came across a small notebook tucked behind a stack of towels. Inside were pages filled with neat, careful handwriting. Lists of children's names, dates, notes like "no bruises visible tonight." Cried when father raised voice. Mother locked child in room again. None of them were about Mason. None of them were about our house, but the pages kept going. Some of the entries had addresses next to them. I recognized one, Melanie's Street. I was still staring at the book when Lily walked into the room. She didn't even look surprised, just tilted her head and said, "Some parents don't deserve their children." I didn't know what to say. I told her she should go home. That night I barely slept. I told my husband everything, and we agreed to find a new babysitter. But before we could act, Melanie didn't show up to work. The news broke the next day. Her husband had been found dead in the garage, an apparent suicide. Melanie was missing. And the kids? Safe. Found sleeping in their beds, completely unharmed. No sign of struggle, no forced entry. Just gone. I tried to call Lily, but her number was disconnected. When the police asked questions, I didn't say anything about the notebook. I should have, but fear held my tongue. What if she came back? I didn't see her again for 6 months. Not until the night Mason woke up screaming. It was just after 3 a.m. He was inconsolable, shaking, eyes wide like he'd seen something no child should ever see. "She was in my room," he whispered. "The lady with the red eyes." We didn't believe him at first. We said it was a bad dream. But when I went to check his room, the window was unlocked, something I never forgot to secure. On the floor by his bed was a single sheet of paper. It was torn from the notebook I'd found. It only said, "He's safe. You're not." That was when I went to the police. I gave them everything. The notebook, the name, even the addresses I could recognize. But there was no record of Lily ever working for an agency. No last name on file. Her phone was a prepaid burner. Her references, all fake. What finally turned the investigation was a tip from a retired social worker. She recognized one of the notes I described, word for word, from a home visit she had logged almost 15 years earlier. It was a line she had written about a child named Lillian Monroe. That child had vanished. The house she grew up in had been condemned years ago after reports of severe neglect and child abuse. Police reopened the file and searched the property again. Behind a loose panel inside a hallway closet, they discovered a narrow crawl space. Inside were dozens of old-school file folders, all taken from records that had gone missing from social services databases. Each folder had a child's name. Many had drawings or school progress reports inside, along with handwritten updates that clearly didn't come from teachers or caseworkers. One folder was labeled Mason. There was nothing harmful inside, just a finger painting he'd done at daycare and a note. "Listens well, sleeps calmly, no signs of fear." That was when the FBI took over. Turns out Lily's real name wasn't Lily. She'd changed it multiple times over the years. She'd moved from state to state, finding families through referrals or Craigslist. Always kind, always quiet, always good with kids. But in each town, after she left, someone disappeared. Her own childhood was a nightmare. She'd been beaten, locked in closets, starved. Her parents were both dead, her mother from overdose, her father from a house fire under suspicious circumstances. The only thing left from her original file was a photo of her at 6 years old, holding a doll with no eyes. They never found her. Sometimes I still wonder if she's out there, watching. Maybe she still believes she's doing something good. Maybe, in her twisted mind, she's protecting children the only way she knows how. All I know is I check every window now. I don't hire sitters, and I never ignore my child's cries no matter how tired I am. Because somewhere out there is a woman who listens for those cries and punishes the ones who don't.